You send a text, she takes an hour to reply, and suddenly, you're running a full investigation in your head. Did I say something wrong? Was that joke weird? Should I have used a different word? Meanwhile, she was probably just in the shower. This pattern, turning ordinary silence into a full psychological case study, quietly wrecks more interactions than any actual mistake ever does. Today, why the overthinking trap happens, and how to actually get out of it. Let's get into it. First, understand where this pattern actually comes from. Overanalyzing isn't really about her. It's about trying to control uncertainty. Not knowing how someone feels is uncomfortable, and the brain hates sitting in that discomfort, so it tries to resolve it by generating explanations, usually the worst possible ones, because threat detection is what your nervous system is wired to prioritize. The overthinking isn't a character flaw. It's your brain trying to protect you from a bad outcome by simulating every bad outcome in advance. Second, recognize that this process almost never produces accurate answers. You're working with a handful of words on a screen and filling in enormous amounts of context that you're simply guessing at. Tone, mood, intention, none of which actually transmits reliably through text. The confidence you feel in your read of the situation has almost no correlation with how accurate that read actually is. Most of the story you build in your head during a 2-hour silence turns out to be completely wrong once you actually talk to her again. Third, notice the physical toll this takes, even when nothing's actually wrong. Checking your phone repeatedly, rereading the same message for hidden meaning, running scenarios on a loop. All of that keeps your nervous system in a low-grade state of stress for something that, statistically, usually resolves itself completely normally. You're paying a real cost, focus, mood, energy, for a problem that in most cases doesn't even exist yet. Fourth, the fix starts with recognizing the moment it begins. There's usually a specific trigger, a delayed reply, a short response, a missing follow-up question, that kicks off the spiral. Once you can name that trigger in real time, okay, this is the moment I start spiraling, you gain a tiny window to interrupt the pattern before it fully takes over, instead of realizing an hour later that you've been stuck in it the whole time. Fifth, redirect the mental energy into something with an actual answer. Overthinking thrives on unresolved questions, so give your brain a resolved one instead. Go do something that requires focus, a workout, a task at work, a conversation with someone else entirely. This isn't distraction for its own sake. It's giving your attention somewhere it can actually produce something, instead of spinning uselessly on a question you don't have the data to answer yet. Sixth, build the habit of waiting for actual information instead of manufacturing it. If you don't know why she hasn't replied, the honest answer is you don't know. Not that you've figured out the most likely negative explanation. Sit with not knowing instead of rushing to fill the gap with a story. This is uncomfortable at first. Tolerating uncertainty always is. But it gets easier every time you practice it instead of avoiding it through speculation. Seventh, remember that even if the worst case is true, you'll handle it fine when you actually know, not before. Almost nothing productive comes from preparing emotionally for a bad outcome that hasn't happened yet. If she really has lost interest, you'll find out and deal with it then. Rehearsing that outcome repeatedly in advance doesn't protect you from it. It just makes you suffer through it twice, once in your imagination and potentially again for real. Eighth, notice how this pattern shows up outside of texting too, because it usually does. Replaying conversations after they happen, obsessing over how something came across, rehearsing what you should have said differently. It's the same mechanism just applied to the past instead of the present. Working on this skill in one area of your life tends to improve it everywhere else, because the underlying habit, discomfort with uncertainty, is the same regardless of where it shows up. So here's the full picture. Overthinking is your brain trying to control uncertainty, not a sign something's actually wrong. The stories you generate are rarely accurate, no matter how convincing they feel in the moment. The spiral has a real cost, even when nothing bad happens. Catch the trigger early instead of realizing an hour in. Redirect your attention into something with an actual answer. Practice sitting with not knowing instead of manufacturing a conclusion. Trust that you'll handle bad news fine when it's real, without needing to rehearse it in advance. And notice this pattern everywhere it shows up, not just in one relationship. Get better at tolerating uncertainty, and most of this quietly disappears on its own. Peace.